The waiter's face went white when I pulled out the black card. Not the kind of white you get from stage fright or too much coffee, the kind that comes from recognizing something you thought was buried forever. "Welcome back, Mr. Harper," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the Christmas jazz playing in Romano's Steakhouse. "Your uncle's table is always ready." The entire table fell silent. My wife Caroline's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, a piece of prime rib dangling like her jaw. Her father, Richard Palmer, old money, older attitude, actually choked on his wine. Even Adrian Wells, the smarmy tech executive Caroline had invited as her friend, looked like someone had just told him his Tesla was on fire, which, come to think of it, wasn't a bad idea. "I'll take the check," I said, sliding the card across the white tablecloth with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're holding all the aces in a game everyone thought you didn't even know how to play. See, 30 minutes earlier, Caroline had dropped her little Christmas bomb right between the appetizers and the main course. "I'm filing for divorce after New Year's," she'd announced, cutting her steak with surgical precision. "I think it's best for everyone." Her mother, Evelyn, had actually smiled. That thin, lifeless smile, rich people perfect in prep school. "Oh, Caroline, you'll finally be free of all this blue-collar baggage." Richard had laughed, the sound like ice cracking. "You'll be homeless by February, Sam. Hope you saved up for a studio apartment." Adrian had just smirked, probably already planning which bedroom in my house would become his home office. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People stop looking for surprises. They stop checking if the quiet guy in the corner might actually be the most dangerous person in the room. The waiter, Tony, I remembered now, brought the check on a silver tray. The total was $437. I added a $300 tip and signed with a flourish. "Merry Christmas, everyone," I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. This was illuminating. Caroline's face had gone from white to red to something approaching purple. "Sam, where did you get that card?" "Family heirloom," I said. "Amazing what you can inherit when people die, isn't it?" The truth was messier, of course. Uncle Vincent had left me more than just a construction business when he passed 6 months ago. He'd left me connections, accounts, and most importantly, information. The kind of information that comes from 40 years of building houses, offices, and occasionally secrets for the right people. Walking out into the December snow, I could hear them arguing behind me. Caroline's voice, shrill with panic. Adrian's, trying to sound calm but cracking at the edges. The in-laws, demanding explanations nobody could give. I keyed Adrian's Tesla on the way to my truck. Just a little scratch along the driver's side, right where the security camera would catch it perfectly. When the police asked, I'd say the wind must have blown my keys. Terrible weather for expensive cars. My phone buzzed as I drove home. Text from Caroline. "We need to talk. Now." I texted back, "Schedule it through my lawyer." I didn't have a lawyer yet, but I'd have one by morning. Uncle Vincent's little black book had numbers for everything. The house felt different when I walked in. Colder, emptier, like Caroline had already started erasing me from it. She was waiting in the living room, still in her black dress from dinner. But she'd traded the heels for slippers. Even her feet were retreating. "Sit down," she said, patting the couch beside her. "We need to discuss this like adults." "I'm good standing," I said. "Adults don't ambush their spouses at Christmas dinner." She tried her smile, the one that used to work back when I thought she was just complicated instead of calculating. "Sam, you're being dramatic. This doesn't have to be ugly." "You're right," I said. "It doesn't have to be ugly, but it's going to be." That's when I noticed her phone on the coffee table. Not her regular iPhone, the cheap Android she thought I didn't know about, the one she used for things she didn't want showing up on our family plan. "New phone?" I asked. "Work phone," she said too quickly. "Company policy. Since when does HR need burner phones?" Her face tightened. "It's not a burner phone, Sam. God, you're so paranoid." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Caroline, I've been building things for 15 years. You know what the first rule of construction is?" "What?" "Always check the foundation before you start tearing down walls." I walked upstairs, leaving her with that cryptic comment. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, I opened her closet and started looking. Not for clothes or shoes or whatever normal husbands might snoop for. I was looking for the things she thought I'd never find. The false bottom in her jewelry box was amateur hour. Underneath, her grandmother's pearls. A second driver's license with a P.O. box address I'd never seen. A credit card in her maiden name, and a key that didn't fit anything in our house. But the real treasure was in her coat pocket. The Android phone, still warm from dinner, with exactly the kind of messages you'd expect from a woman planning to destroy her husband's life. Adrian, did you tell him about the house? Caroline, not yet. Want to get him out first, then spring the foreclosure. Adrian, your dad's lawyer's ready? Caroline, Tuesday. Sam will be homeless and broke by Valentine's Day. Adrian, can't wait to christen every room. I took pictures of everything with my real phone, then put everything back exactly where I found it. Caroline was still downstairs, probably calling her parents or Adrian or whoever else was part of this little conspiracy. My phone rang. Unknown number. Sam Harper? The voice was gravelly, older, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. Who's asking? Name's Gary. I own Murphy's Pub downtown. Your Uncle Vincent was a friend of mine. Okay, I heard you might need some consultation on a personal matter. I looked down at Caroline, who was pacing the living room while talking in hushed tones to someone. What kind of consultation? The kind your uncle specialized in. When people needed problems solved quietly. I'm listening. Murphy's, tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Come alone. The line went dead. Downstairs, Caroline had finished her call and was looking up at me with something that might have been concern if I didn't know better. Everything okay? She asked. Perfect, I said. Just making plans for the new year. She smiled that fake smile again. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Oh, Caroline, I said, heading for the guest room. You have no idea how reasonable I can be. I spent the night planning, not the emotional, angry kind of planning that gets you arrested or divorced or both. The kind of methodical, patient planning that Uncle Vincent had taught me when I was 16 and some older kids were giving me trouble at school. Sammy, he'd said, sitting in his kitchen with a beer and a cigarette, there's two kinds of people in this world. The ones who get mad and the ones who get even. The mad ones make noise and mistakes. The even ones make sure the problem never happens again. Those older kids had transferred schools by spring. Something about their parents' business suddenly failing a health inspection, their dad losing a city contract, their mom's car breaking down in increasingly expensive ways. Nothing traceable, nothing illegal, just a series of unfortunate coincidences that made staying in town inconvenient. Caroline thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. But Uncle Vincent had taught me a different game entirely. One where the rules weren't written down anywhere, and the winner was whoever could wait the longest to make their move. Tomorrow night, I'd start learning the new rules. Murphy's Pub looked like every other dive bar in America. Neon beer signs, sticky floors, and the kind of regulars who'd been sitting on the same stools since the Carter administration. But Gary Murphy wasn't what I expected. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and hands that looked like they'd built half the city. When he smiled, it was genuine, not like the calculated expressions I'd been getting from my wife's family. Vincent talked about you, he said, sliding a beer across the bar. Said you had potential but needed the right motivation. Looks like I found it. Marriage trouble's a heck of a motivator. He pulled out a tablet, swiped to a photo of Caroline and Adrian at some restaurant I'd never been to. Your wife's been busy. The photos were recent. Caroline laughing at something Adrian was saying, his hand on her thigh, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. They looked comfortable together, like they'd been doing this for a while. How long? I asked. Best guess? 8 months, maybe more. Gary swiped to another photo. Started right around the time you got that promotion to site manager. That stung. I'd been so proud of that promotion, so excited to tell her we could finally afford the kitchen renovation she'd been wanting. Turns out she'd been celebrating in her own way. What else do you know? Gary's smile turned predatory. Everything. Your wife's not as smart as she thinks she is. Neither is her boyfriend. He showed me more photos, bank records, text messages, even hotel receipts. Caroline and Adrian had been planning this divorce for months, timing it perfectly to maximize their advantage and minimize mine. The house was going into foreclosure. Something about missed payments I'd never been told about. My truck was going to be repossessed. Even my tools were going to be seized for business debts I'd never incurred. They're trying to destroy you, Gary said. Completely. Not just divorce, total annihilation. Why? Because Adrian wants your life, and Caroline wants his money. Simple as that. I finished my beer, processing everything. What would Uncle Vincent do? Vincent would make them wish they'd never heard your name. Gary leaned closer. Question is, what are you willing to do? Whatever it takes. Good answer. He handed me a business card. Plain white. Just a phone number. Call that tomorrow. Tell them Gary sent you. They'll take care of the legal stuff. Real lawyers, not the hack Caroline's family hired. What about the rest? Gary's grin was pure wolf. The rest is where it gets fun. The next morning, Caroline was gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at my parents'. Need space to think. What she really needed was space to plan, but I wasn't going to complain. Having the house to myself made everything easier. I called the number Gary had given me. A woman answered on the first ring. Mitchell, Reeves and Associates. Gary Murphy sent me. Hold, please. 30 seconds later, a man's voice. Mr. Harper, this is David Mitchell. Gary filled me in on your situation. Can you be here in an hour? The law office was downtown in one of those old buildings that screamed money and power. David Mitchell looked like he'd stepped out of a movie about lawyers, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes from winning cases other people thought were impossible. Your wife has made some interesting financial decisions, he said, spreading papers across his desk. Fortunately, none of them are legal. What do you mean? She's been forging your signature on loan documents, using your business credit for personal expenses, even taking out a second mortgage without your knowledge. Mitchell's smile was razor sharp. In legal terms, she's committed fraud, multiple counts. Can we prove it? We don't have to. She documented everything herself. He showed me copies of documents I'd never seen before, all bearing signatures that looked like mine but weren't. Your wife is thorough, I'll give her that. Also incredibly stupid. What are my options? Option 1, we file criminal charges. She goes to prison, you keep everything, but it takes years to sort out. Option 2, we use this information as leverage. She gives you everything you want in the divorce, or we hand this evidence to the district attorney. I like option 2. Thought you might. Mitchell handed me another set of papers. These are the real divorce papers. Your terms, not hers. She signs them or she explains to a jury why she thought forgery was a good idea. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just hope, power. The kind that comes from knowing you're not the victim anymore. My phone rang. Caroline, Sam, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at Romano's, 1 hour. Our table available? There was a pause. Just be there, okay? She hung up before I could answer, but I was already smiling. Caroline was waiting at a corner table when I arrived, wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked nervous, which was new. Caroline Palmer Harper didn't do nervous. You look nice, I said, sitting down. Thank you. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, the one that had been missing in Gary's photos. Sam, I think we got off on the wrong foot the other night. You think? I was emotional, stressed about work, about us, about everything. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. Maybe we can work this out. I let her take my hand, even squeezed back a little. What changed your mind? I love you, she said, and almost sounded like she meant it. I know I haven't been the best wife lately, but I want to try again. What about Adrian? She blinked just once, but it was enough. What about him? He's your friend, right? Won't he be disappointed if we work things out? Adrian's just a colleague, Sam. You're being paranoid. I pulled out my phone, swiped one of Gary's photos. Caroline and Adrian at dinner. His hand places, hands don't go between colleagues. Her face went through several colors before settling on pale green. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Sam, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're good at explaining things. I put the phone away. Like how you explained those loan documents you signed with my name. Now she looked genuinely scared. What loan documents? The ones my lawyer has copies of, along with the forged signatures, the fraudulent mortgage application, and about 6 other felonies you've committed in the last 8 months. Caroline's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You don't have a lawyer! Mitchell, Reeves and Associates. David Mitchell, specifically. Nice guy. Used to be a prosecutor before he went private. I signaled the waiter for coffee. He's very interested in your case. Sam, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You and Adrian decided to destroy my life so you could start yours together. The only problem is you're both idiots. She started crying then, the kind of calculated tears that used to work on me. Please, Sam, we can fix this. You're right, we can. I pulled out the divorce papers Mitchell had prepared. Sign these. She looked at the first page and her tears stopped immediately. This is insane. You want the house, the cars, half my retirement account? I want what's mine, plus compensation for the fraud. I'll fight this. With what lawyer? The one your daddy hired? Because I already called him. Turns out he doesn't handle criminal defense. I leaned back in my chair. But don't worry, I'm sure the public defender will do their best. Caroline's hands were shaking now. You can't do this to me. Caroline, I'm not doing anything to you. You did this to yourself. I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table. You have 24 hours to sign those papers. After that, I call the district attorney. Sam, wait. But I was already walking away. Behind me, I could hear her starting to sob for real this time. Not the manipulative tears she'd perfected over the years, but the genuine despair of someone who'd just realized they'd outsmarted themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from Gary. How'd it go? I typed back, hook, line, and sinker. Good. Phase 2 starts tomorrow. What's Phase 2? The friends who turn their backs on you, time to return the favor. The thing about small towns is that everyone knows everyone else's business. When Caroline and I started having problems, word got around fast. And when word gets around, people pick sides. Most of our mutual friends picked hers. There was Jake Morrison, my old college roommate, who'd stopped returning my calls after Caroline told him I was going through a difficult phase. There was Susan Chen, Caroline's maid of honor, who'd blocked me on social media and started spreading rumors about my anger issues. And there was the whole crew from our couple's game night, Tom and Jennifer Walsh, Mike and Lisa Rodriguez, who'd suddenly become too busy for our standing Saturday night tradition. They'd all bought Caroline's story that I was the problem. The unstable husband who couldn't handle his successful wife, the blue-collar guy who was holding back his ambitious partner. Gary had files on all of them. People in glass houses, he said, spreading photos across the bar. Your friend Jake? He's been skimming from his construction company's payroll. Susan Chen? She's been having an affair with her boss for 2 years. The Walshes? They're about to lose their house because Tom's been gambling their mortgage payments away. How do you know all this? Small town, remember? People talk to bartenders. Gary's smile was pure satisfaction. Question is, what do you want to do about it? They chose Caroline over me, without even asking for my side of the story. Loyalty's a two-way street, Sam. Time to close their lane. The next morning, I started making calls, not to my former friends, to the people who could make their lives complicated. Jake's business partner, for instance, might be interested to know about those missing payroll funds. Susan's husband might want to see those hotel receipts Gary had somehow acquired. Tom's bookie might appreciate knowing where to find him when the next payment was due. I wasn't doing anything illegal, just sharing information with people who had a right to know it. Public service, really. My phone rang around noon. Jake. Sam, what the heck is going on? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. My partner's asking questions about the books, and somehow your name came up as the source. I don't know what you're talking about, Jake. Bees. This is about Caroline, isn't it? You're pissed that we didn't take your side in the divorce. There are no sides, Jake, just right and wrong. So you're going to destroy my business? I'm not destroying anything. I just made sure the right people had the right information. I paused. Kind of like how you made sure everyone knew about my anger issues without bothering to ask if they were real. The line went quiet for a long moment. Sam, I'm sorry about that. Caroline says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. I hung up. Susan called an hour later, crying. Tom called that evening, drunk and belligerent. Jennifer left a voicemail that was mostly sobbing and apologies. By the end of the week, my former friends were dealing with their own problems. Jake's business was under investigation. Susan was sleeping in her sister's guest room. Tom was in compulsive gambling counseling, and Jennifer was looking for a divorce lawyer. I should have felt guilty. These were people I'd cared about, people I'd shared holidays and birthdays and lazy Sunday afternoons with. But they'd abandoned me the moment it became convenient, believing Caroline's lies without question. Uncle Vincent had taught me that loyalty was the most valuable currency in the world. And like any currency, it had to be earned, spent wisely, and never wasted on people who wouldn't return the investment. My former friends had made their choice. Now they were living with the consequences. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came on a Friday night, I was at Murphy's, having a quiet beer and going over the final divorce papers with Gary, when the door burst open and my former friends walked in like they were storming the beaches at Normandy. Jake led the charge, followed by Susan, Tom, and Jennifer. They looked like heck. Jake's usually perfect hair was disheveled, Susan's eyes were red from crying, and Tom looked like he hadn't slept in days. "There he is," Jake announced to the mostly empty bar. "The puppet master himself." I didn't look up from my beer. "Evening, folks. How's everyone doing?" "You son of a witch," Susan said, her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed my marriage." "I didn't destroy anything, Susan. I just made sure your husband knew where you've been spending your lunch hours for the past 2 years. That's not your business." "You're right, it wasn't." I finally looked up at her. "Just like my marriage wasn't your business. But that didn't stop you from spreading Caroline's lies about me, did it?" Tom stepped forward, swaying slightly. He'd been drinking before he got here. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Pulling strings, ruining lives." "I think I'm exactly as smart as I need to be." "We were your friends, Sam." "No, Tom. You were Caroline's friends. I was just the husband you tolerated because you had to." Jennifer, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke up. "Sam, we made a mistake. We should have listened to your side of the story, but this is too far." "Is it?" I stood up and Gary moved closer, ready for trouble. "Let me ask you something, Jen. When Caroline told you I was emotionally controlling, did you call me to check? When she said I was drinking too much, did you invite me over to see for yourself? When she said I was holding her back from her dreams, did you ask what my dreams were?" She looked away. "That's what I thought. You all made your choice based on gossip and assumptions. Now you're upset because I made mine based on facts." Jake slammed his fist on the bar. "Facts? You call destroying people's lives facts? I call exposing the truth facts. The rest of you did the destroying yourselves. We trusted you, and I trusted you. Guess we were both wrong." The bar had gone completely quiet. Even the old-timers at the pool table had stopped playing to watch the show. Susan was crying again. "Sam, please, I'm losing everything. So was I. The difference is, I didn't deserve it." Tom lurched forward, and for a moment I thought he might actually take a swing at me. But Gary stepped between us, and something in the older man's eyes made Tom think better of it. "This isn't over," Tom said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over for months. You just didn't realize it yet." They left then, muttering threats and promises of revenge that we all knew were empty. They were too busy dealing with their own problems to cause me any real trouble. Gary poured me another beer. "Feel better?" "Not really, but it needed to be done." "Your uncle would be proud." "Would he?" Vincent understood that sometimes you have to burn bridges to keep people from following you across them. I thought about that as I finished my beer. Caroline had turned my friends against me, probably thinking it would isolate me, make me more dependent on her, easier to control. Instead, she taught me something valuable about the difference between real loyalty and social convenience. My phone buzzed. Text message from Caroline. "I signed the papers. It's over." I showed the message to Gary, who grinned. "Phase 3? I asked. "Phase 3, he confirmed. "Time to deal with the boyfriend." Adrian Wells was everything I wasn't. Smooth, educated, the kind of guy who used words like synergy in casual conversation and actually meant them. He drove a Tesla, lived in a downtown condo that cost more than most people's houses, and had the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. He was also, according to Gary's research, a complete fraud. "His resume is mostly fiction," Gary explained, spreading documents across the bar. "The MBA from Wharton? Never happened. That startup he claims to have founded? Bought the domain name and some fake press releases? Even his job at Caroline's company, he got it by sleeping with the previous HR director. So he's a professional liar. The best kind. The kind who believes his own lies." Gary had been busy. Adrian's condo was financed with money from a dozen different credit cards. His Tesla was leased under a fake business name. Even his expensive suits were rented from a company that specialized in helping wannabes look successful. He's broke? Worse than broke. He's leveraged up to his eyeballs, betting everything on marrying Caroline and getting access to her family's money. What happens when he finds out Caroline doesn't have any money anymore? Gary's smile was pure evil. That's what we're about to find out. The plan was simple. Adrian was giving a presentation to potential investors the next Tuesday, trying to raise money for some tech startup that existed mostly in his imagination. Gary had contacts in the investment community, people who owed Uncle Vincent favors and were happy to transfer that debt to me. All it took was a few phone calls. By Monday afternoon, every investor on Adrian's list knew exactly who they were dealing with. The fake credentials, the borrowed money, the history of failed schemes and abandoned partners. Tuesday morning, Adrian's presentation was canceled. By Tuesday afternoon, his boss at Caroline's company was asking uncomfortable questions about his background. By Tuesday evening, his landlord was demanding 3 months of back rent that Adrian couldn't pay. Wednesday morning, I was having coffee at the diner across from his building when I saw him loading boxes into his Tesla. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. My phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Sam Harper? Depends who's asking. This is Adrian Wells. I think we need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Why would I do that? Because you've won. Okay? You've completely destroyed my life. The least you can do is let me ask why. Riverside Park was mostly empty on a Wednesday afternoon. Adrian was sitting on a bench by the pond, looking like a man who'd just watched his entire world collapse. Which I supposed he had. You want to know why? I said, sitting down next to him. I want to understand how. How did you know about the investors? How did you get access to my financial records? How did I figure out you were a fraud? He nodded. Adrian, you made 2 mistakes. First, you underestimated me. Second, you overestimated yourself. I never did anything to you personally. You slept with my wife. You helped her plan to destroy my life. You were going to move into my house and erase me like I never existed. I turned to look at him. How is that not personal? Caroline said you two were already over, that you were just going through the motions. Caroline says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Adrian laughed bitterly. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. Little late for that revelation. She told me her family had money, that her father was going to help finance my company. Her father's broke too, has been for years. They've been living on credit and reputation since 2008. Adrian's face went completely white. That's impossible, is it? When's the last time you saw Richard Palmer actually spend money? Real money, not credit cards or loans or family accounts that never seem to have statements. I could see him thinking, remembering, adding up all the small signs he'd ignored because he wanted to believe the fantasy Caroline had sold him. So what now? He asked. Now you disappear. Leave town, start over somewhere else, and pray I never hear your name again. And if I don't? I stood up, looked down at him, sitting there in his rented suit with his fake confidence finally stripped away. Adrian, you've seen what I can do when I'm motivated. Do you really want to find out what happens when I'm angry? He shook his head. Good choice. I walked away, leaving him sitting by the pond like a man at his own funeral. My phone buzzed with a text from Gary. Tesla just pulled out of the condo parking garage, heading for the highway. Good, I texted back. One problem solved. Ready for the finale? I looked back at the bench where Adrian had been sitting. It was empty now, like he'd never been there at all. Let's finish this. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen in my house, drinking coffee from my favorite mug and reading the morning paper like a normal human being. The divorce was final, the house was mine, and Caroline was living in a studio apartment across town, working at a call center because her old job had mysteriously disappeared along with her boyfriend. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there was Caroline. She looked different. Thinner, tired, wearing clothes I didn't recognize, because they probably came from a thrift store instead of the boutiques she used to frequent. Hello, Sam. Caroline, what do you want? Can I come in, just for a minute? I considered it, then stepped aside. She walked into what used to be our living room, looking around like she was visiting a museum of her former life. The place looks good, she said. Thanks. I heard about Adrian. What about him? He left town, just disappeared one day. His company folded, his condo was repossessed, even his car was taken back by the dealer. Sounds rough. She turned to look at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Sam, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I hurt you, betrayed you, tried to destroy everything we built together. Yes, you did. But I need you to know that I'm sorry, really, truly sorry. Okay, is that it? Just okay? I sat down in my chair, Uncle Vincent's old recliner that I'd inherited along with everything else, and looked at the woman I'd been married to for 8 years. Caroline, do you remember our wedding day? Of course. Do you remember what you said in your vows? The part about for better or worse, for richer or poorer? She nodded. I meant those words. Every single one of them. When you got passed over for that promotion 3 years ago, I was there. When your mother had her heart attack, I was there. When you wanted to go back to school for your master's degree, I worked overtime for 6 months to pay for it. I remember. But the first time, things got difficult for me, really difficult. You decided I was disposable. You didn't try to work it out, didn't suggest counseling, didn't even have the courtesy to tell me you were unhappy. You just started planning my destruction. Caroline was crying now, the real tears I'd seen that day at Romano's. I was scared, she said. Scared that I was settling, that I was wasting my life, that I'd wake up at 50 and regret everything. So you decided to make sure I'd wake up at 50 with nothing. Yes. And I was wrong. Completely, horribly wrong. Yes, you were. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Is there any chance, any possibility that we could try again? I know it would take time and trust, and I know I'd have to prove myself, but... The word hung in the air between us like a physical thing. Sam, please. Caroline, you didn't just break my heart. You broke something more important than that. You broke my faith in you, in us, in the idea that the person who's supposed to love you most in the world won't try to destroy you the moment it becomes convenient. People change. I've changed. Have you, or are you just out of options? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I want you to leave now, I said. Sam, Caroline, leave. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I loved you, you know. I really did love you. I know, I said. That's what makes this so unforgivable. After she left, I sat in Uncle Vincent's chair for a long time, thinking about justice and revenge, and the difference between the two. Caroline had gotten exactly what she deserved. No more, no less. She'd tried to destroy my life, and I'd returned the favor with interest. But sitting there in my quiet house, I realized something that Uncle Vincent had probably known all along. Winning doesn't always feel like you think it will. Sometimes it just feels like surviving. My phone buzzed. Text from Gary. Heard you had a visitor. News travels fast in a small town. How do you feel? I thought about that for a moment, then typed back, free. Good. Vincent would be proud. I put the phone away and looked around my house, really looked at it, maybe for the first time in years. It was mine now, completely and legally mine. No shared mortgage, no joint accounts, no wife who might decide tomorrow that she wanted something different. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not the cold, calculating smile I've been wearing since Christmas dinner, but something genuine and warm and real. Outside, and it was starting to snow again. But inside, it finally felt like spring. I had survived Caroline's betrayal. I had outsmarted Adrian's schemes. I had learned the difference between friends and acquaintances, between loyalty and convenience, between justice and revenge. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the best way to win is to make sure your enemies defeat themselves. The phone rang one more time. Unknown number. Sam Harper, speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not just because things went bad for us, but because we were wrong about you, about Caroline, about everything. I appreciate that, Jennifer. Is there any chance, could we maybe try to be friends again? Real friends this time? I thought about Uncle Vincent, about Gary, about the difference between people who stick around when things get tough and people who run at the first sign of trouble. I don't know, Jen. Trust is a hard thing to rebuild. I understand, but if you ever want to try, Tom's been sober for 3 months now. We're working things out, and we both learned something important about judging people without knowing the whole story. I'm glad you're working things out. Maybe we could all work things out. The people who matter, anyway. After I hung up, I realized that Uncle Vincent had taught me one more lesson, one I was just now understanding. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building a life so good that their absence from it becomes irrelevant. Caroline was gone. Adrian was gone. The fake friends were dealing with their own problems, but I was still here, in my house, with my future spread out in front of me like a blank page waiting to be written. I poured another cup of coffee and opened the morning paper to the classifieds. There was a whole section of personal ads. People looking for companionship, for friendship, for someone to share their lives with. Real people with real problems and real hopes. Not the manufactured drama I'd been living with for so long. Maybe it was time to start writing that new chapter. The snow was falling harder now, covering the world outside in a clean white blanket that made everything look fresh and new. I watched it through the kitchen window, sipping my coffee and thinking about possibilities. My phone buzzed one last time. Text from an unknown number. Saw your wife at the grocery store. She looked terrible. Thought you should know. I deleted the message without responding. Caroline's problems weren't my problems anymore. Her life wasn't my life anymore. Whatever happened to her from here on out was her responsibility, just like my life was mine. I finished my coffee, put on my coat, and walked outside into the snow. It was cold and clean and beautiful, the kind of weather that makes you feel like anything is possible. For the first time in almost a year, I believed that was true.